Hello, welcome. I'm Shellen Briand, and I am one of the success coaches at Supermoms. And I am joined today by Heather Black. She is the founder and CEO of Supermoms and the author of the best-selling book, Become a Super Salesforce Consultant. And it is an A to Z guide. And we have been working through one letter a week and really excited to be here today to dive into how to get senior management bought into Salesforce, which is often quite the hurdle. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Shellen. No, it's lovely to be here and to be discussing governance and about how to get people bought in. I certainly know it's, having come across this on various Salesforce projects, that people can struggle with this if they're trying to get budget signed off, or they're trying to introduce new products and people want it. So I think it'd be a really interesting topic to talk about today, and hopefully give some of you some ideas.
Yeah, perfect. So what do you think really drives this? Why is it so hard to get managers bought into projects at times?
So there's a few examples that I've seen on projects where this has come up. One is where the managers hadn't been given any training on what Salesforce was. And this was new managers. They actually had a Salesforce system historically, but when new managers had come in, they weren't given any training on it. They didn't use it day to day. They didn't understand it. So I think it's really important that managers are educated on Salesforce and how it can help them as a manager, so they understand it. And that, is before it's then rolled out with their teams effectively. But in this specific use case, the teams were using it, but the managers weren't bought in, and they just weren't engaged with it. So I think that educational piece about, why are we using it? And that then takes me to the higher discussion about the business case. There needs to be a really clear business case about why, as an organization, they need to start using Salesforce. Is it because their competitors are using it and it's, they're winning more work because of it? Or is it that it's a compliance requirement and it's absolutely essential that they use it? Or is it that actually it's going to help their sales team perform better because maybe they don't have a system for tracking their sales performance, or they need to introduce new technology like AI gadgets, etc., to improve sales leads and sales conversions, and maybe it's going to solve some of their pain points for them. So I think it's looking at, what are the reasons they need to use it? Why should they be using it? How is it going to help them achieve better outcomes in their job and support their team with it? And it's that whole educational piece. And there will also be the challenge, the other kind of key sort of, I suppose, gap in why is if there isn't the executive sponsor holding them together. There isn't a senior manager who is the one sort of saying, hey guys, we've got this, I think this is really good, and sort of being that influential communicator with them. There has to be that seniority, somebody who's senior, who is excited. And if that exec sponsor's gone, then nobody else is going to be bothered, and it all will fall flat. So there needs to be a good executive sponsor, a good center of excellence, where they all come together and they're all bought in as part of it.
So if you're a consultant coming into an environment where there is Salesforce and perhaps you've been brought in on a project, how do you go about even evaluating whether or not managers have that buy-in and support?
One-on-one interviews actually with them, I think, is because you don't want to embarrass them in front of their teams, for example, and obviously you need them to be bought in. So what you'd want to do is have, as part of the business analysis process, you're going to go in and do a design workshop with that team, say the sales team, for example. Before you go in, you want to be having a one-on-one interview with that manager of that department, and gauging their current knowledge of Salesforce, educating them where there's a gap, and making sure, before that you'd have a pre-design workshop and brief where you've given them a demo of what Salesforce is and what it can do, and talked about the business case. So you've kind of got that buy-in with the senior management before you even get there. Then you've got that one-to-one with, say, going back to the sales manager one-to-one, sort of also talking to them like, who are who are the keen people in the team for this, and doing that stakeholder mapping and working out who might be the blockers, the champions, the sleepers, which we could talk about in change management, and sort of just understanding where people sit and building your relationship with them. Because if that manager is not bought into Salesforce, you need to either escalate it to the executive sponsor, and you've got to try and get them on board, or else if they're not bought in, the rest of the team are unlikely to use it as well.
Okay, that's great. Well, in the book, you talk about just how vital it is to have a governance structure. Could you dive into that a bit and tell us why that helps and what that would look like?
Yeah, so with the governance structure, it's a group of people that will effectively come together to govern Salesforce, like the parents of Salesforce, really. And they will meet on maybe a monthly basis or quarterly basis, depending on the vigor of that CRM strategy. Together, they will hold responsibility for what the business case is, making sure that that is executed with Salesforce, tracking and reporting on whether it's achieving the results, agreeing what the priorities are for build, which department will get dealt with first, what work's going to be done and where is money going to be invested. But it creates that unity of managers to come together to have that big picture view and to be educated about what's important and why, for them to feel like they're being listened to, that their requirements are also being heard and prioritized where appropriate, in line with everything else. Because there can be a bit of a fun fight around the table there, because everybody might have competing requirements, but it's part of that discussion that needs to happen across departmental that kind of goes, what is it the business needs? When we talked about agile project management on the first week we did these with and with agile project management, you go back to going, well, what are the key business priorities? And then we'll prioritize the Salesforce build to align with those business priorities. So in the Center of Excellence, you are collectively not looking at your isolated parts of the business. You are looking at the full business picture. You are agreeing the Salesforce priorities based on the business need and the bigger picture. And then sort of obviously measuring the success behind that, all of that. And so it just creates that platform for unity. And everybody's bought into it, because what you don't want is an organization where there's a lack of knowledge between what's going on in different departments. Another project that we worked on, when we went into every department, they just had completely their own sort of perspective about how other teams were using it, and they didn't even know, they were just assuming that they weren't using it, or they were, how they were using it, they just didn't know. Whereas if there's this cross-departmental communication and conversation at the Center of Excellence level, there should be that knowledge and understanding about how engaged different teams are, and that trust as well. Because also, if different teams have a consensus, have a feeling that other teams aren't using it, then what was very apparent was that people didn't trust the data. They didn't trust why, if they're not using it, why should we use it? There was a whole lack of trust in the system and the data that was being put into it, which meant that then user adoption was being a problem for people.
That makes sense. So I wonder if there is any advice that you have for someone who maybe doesn't have as much experience as a consultant, or maybe a little bit younger, newer in their career, on how to build that rapport and credibility and respect from the leaders to be able to influence them in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I felt quite privileged, I suppose. I started out as a Salesforce professional in my early 30s, and I'd quite often been in a room of more mature senior managers, if you like, in their 50s, and I'm like, okay, I've got to hold this court. How do I build trust with them that I can lead them on this journey and get their buy-in? And in the book, I talk about change management. It's also what I teach on the change management on the consultancy skills course that I run at Supermums. Change management is a big thing here, but how do you bring people on a journey with you? And so the first reason is, why are they implementing Salesforce? What are the problems that it's going to solve for them? And then creating a demo and explaining how Salesforce is going to solve those problems through technology will light their fire, and that's why they're going to buy Salesforce in the first place. So this building trust happens from selling in Salesforce, the initial sales process, really, because they're kind of like, well, should I buy it? Won't I? Is this going to work for us? You're kind of building that trust there. Then once it's been, that decision to buy it has been made, there's a level of trust here. So obviously that guy, that person who has chosen to buy Salesforce needs to communicate to the managers like, well, this is why I believe, and this is, show that demo again and educate them. So showing, visualize, we talk about different learning styles. I've just done my consultancy skills training on this today, actually. Is about communicating in the 4 different learning styles. We talk about visual learners, kinesthetic learners, audio, digital, and audio learners. You need to communicate how Salesforce is going to help them and why it's important in 4 different learning styles to make sure you're accommodating for different people in the room. And that could be through the demo, it could be through facts and figures. Salesforce is the #1 CRM platform in the world and is used by all these companies. Even your competitors use it, and they're achieving X, Y, Z with it. That's going to flag the audio digital people. If you show a demo, it's going to get the visual and the audio learners. Now with kinesthetic, they need something to touch and feel and hold, so they might need to get their hands dirty with it. You might want to give them some trailheads to do if they're kinesthetic learners. And so they can sort of have a go, what is this? And they can go away and play with the Sales Cloud module in their own time. So that hits the Sales Cloud module. So if you can do a presentation to that management team that covers all those different learning styles that, will help them understand it in the way that is important to them, then you're going to get their trust and their buy-in, and then they'll listen to you, and then they'll act on it. Okay, we do want this. This would be amazing. It is #1 CRM. It is, we want to be better than our competitors, or, okay, I get it now. I've done the trailhead. They'll be on their decision-making journey, and then they'll get their teams on board because of that as well. So it is very much about making sure you're communicating to cover those different learning styles to get people bought in.
Perfect. Well, as always, an incredible amount of good, valuable advice. Certainly encourage everyone to get a copy of your book, They Become a Super Salesforce Consultant. There's just A to Z guide, lots of practical information. And if you want an opportunity to learn directly from and interact with Heather week after week for a 12-week consultancy course, feel free to send us a DM, pop a comment, visit the website, and we can certainly share more. It was such a pleasure, and I learned so much taking the course myself, and it is a wonderful return on investment, certainly.
Oh, thank you, Shellen. Thank you, everyone. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments. We'd love to answer that. If anything resonated with you, equally put that in the comments as well. We'd love to hear from you. And tune in for next week where we cover the next topic.
Exactly. Same time, same place. Bye, everyone.
Bye.